What do I do? What do I do? This is what you do. Tell me what your intention is, and I will tell you what my intention is, and let's see if we can align those two. What did they really want? What is their intention? What do you want?
Sure.
Why didn't somebody just say that?
It's a good question.
The reality of that was not really making her happy. And so she's freed herself from the marriage, which I think is so liberating.
Oprah is known for her accommodating personality and empowering messages. However, what do Oprah's words actually tell us about her? The criticism Oprah's faced lately runs a lot deeper and comes down to her mindset, her way of branding her ideas and herself. In this video, we look at some of Oprah's telling interviews where she discusses her interview style and compare them to her disastrous video with Dwayne Johnson, who likes to think of himself as The Rock. Welcome to the channel where we look at what influential people say, what they really say. Welcome to the channel. Let's start by looking at Oprah's philosophy for doing interviews and the many problems associated with it. In the following, Oprah talks about her authentic and organic interview with Duchess Meghan Markle and His Royal Highness Prince Harry.
Harry wants to make it very clear, it seems, that he did not blindside the Queen. We left, I don't know if you could hear it, with a bite where you said, doesn't the Queen get to do what the Queen wants to do? He had made several attempts to see his grandmother.
Actually, it's not only Harry who wants to make that clear. Obviously, Gayle wants to make that clear too. And it's not even phrased as a question. It's a statement designed for Oprah to agree with and elaborate on. And it only represents one view, Harry's view.
Yes, and I think that was such an important story to be shared last night. In the process of trying to edit this 3 hours and 20 minutes down to 1 hour and 25 minutes, I'd said to my team, the most important question to be answered here at the end of this show will be, why did they leave?
Oprah's almost contrived sounding interjections. And remarkably slow speech rate give the impression that she's stalling, especially when we couple this with the obvious question she ends up with.
Why did they leave?
Of course, this interview should be about why they left the UK. What else should it be about? Stating the obvious after a long preface like this often points to undisclosed information, postponing the real answer. Later on, we get the real answer why she's done this interview. But first, she has more authentic statements to make.
And I think the stories about being blindsiding the Queen were very, very damaging to them and also hurtful because they understood very clearly that there had been months and months of preparation before they actually moved to Canada. And
damaging and hurtful, she says. Like Gayle and the rest of CBS, these adjectives show whose side Oprah's on. These are the predicates that Meghan and Harry would use to describe their situation. It shouldn't be part of the interviewer's word choice, as interviewers shouldn't only be impartial, but also critical, skeptical even.
And truthfully, there was a statement by the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen, on January 18th, in which she said, following many months of conversations and more recent discussions, I am pleased that together we have found constructive and supportive way forward for my grandson and his family. So the Queen on January 18th actually said that there'd been months of conversation, but in spite of that, there were still all of those stories about blindsiding the Queen, blindsiding the Queen.
That's why the details are important.
I'm very happy
that is why the details are important.
That's why the details are important.
Tabloids.
Now, what's been hinted at is out in the open. That Oprah and CBS are doing damage control for Meghan and Harry, trying to get the audience to focus on what they want them to focus on. In that regard, Oprah's appeal to honesty,
and truthfully,
is worth noting. Appeals to honesty should always be noted because honesty is presupposed in conversations. Thus, why the sudden need to state the obvious? It doesn't mean that every time someone says honestly, they're being deceptive. Here, however, Oprah's adverb truthfully points to a much different underlying truth for two reasons. Firstly, because she's made it very clear that she's on Meghan and Harry's side, so how can we trust the information? Secondly, because she's not giving us the full picture. She says all this, knowing perfectly well that Harry gives a different impression. He says that his relationship to his brother is space, and then proceeds to call his father and brother trapped.
I was trapped, but I didn't know I was trapped. Trapped within the system, like the rest of my family are. My father and my brother, they are trapped.
And ends up commenting specifically on the Queen, saying he was hurt by her decision.
That they will be removing everything.
Are you hurt by that decision?
I am hurt, but at the same time I completely respect my grandmother's decision. I would still love for us to be able to continue to support those associations.
Since then, Harry's doubled down on the lack of contact.
There's a lot that I can forgive, but there needs to be conversations and then in order for reconciliation, and part of that has to be accountability. As far as I see it, the divide couldn't be greater before this book.
Months of conversation, Oprah says.
Many months of conversation.
Even if that were true, it sure hasn't resulted in the harmony that Oprah tries to make it sound like. Thus, Oprah oversimplifies in a way that can only be understood as entirely deliberate. This way, her appeal to honesty more than indicates undisclosed information, that she knows that she's at the very least not telling the whole truth. Except for opinion journalism, interviewers who act as journalists should consider both sides of an argument and remain neutral, especially when the other side doesn't get a chance to speak. Oprah can't draw conclusions based on the claims of one side, but fortunately for her, she's also talking to an interviewer who's on her side.
Tabloids print stuff that they know is false and have been told isn't true.
But Oprah, it's
That's
also...
right.
Because this is what journalism is and should be about. When asked about why Meghan and Harry chose to do the interview, there's more stalling on Oprah's part.
Oh, I think they agreed to do it, wanted to do it, were ready to do it, because when you have been lied about for a series of years...
She sneaks in a presupposition lie. Once again, this is Meghan and Harry's claim, not to be confused with the truth necessarily, but Oprah doesn't care. She's deliberately engaging in covert argumentation where the speaker doesn't have to prove her presuppositions. And obviously, the CBS journalists have no problem with it. Next, we get an insight into Oprah's agenda with interviews. This is very revealing. Let's watch.
The most important thing for them, before I do any interview, I have a conversation with whoever I'm interviewing and ask, tell me what your intention is, and I will tell you what my intention is, and let's see if we can align those two, because I don't want you to finish an interview and at the end of the interview say, I wish I had said. And
But Oprah, let's talk
texted.
Let's talk about the jaw-dropping moment.
The word intention is interesting, especially since Oprah has made it more than clear that she wasn't and isn't an impartial interviewer. As a result then, can people trust that she has anything other than self-serving motives for doing these interviews, simply letting the interviewees make a bunch of claims and presupposing them as facts in softball CBS interviews? In this context, the verb aligning sounds an awful lot like not only compromising, but also apathy.
And align those two, because
Simply letting the interviewee speak, more or less uninterrupted. Let's watch a few examples of the final result, the result of Oprah's approach to journalism.
Did you make Kate cry?
No.
So where did that come from? Was there a situation where she might have cried or she could have cried?
No, the reverse happened. And I don't say that to be disparaging to anyone, because it was a really hard week of the wedding and she was upset about something, but she owned it and she apologized and she brought me flowers and a note apologizing, and she did what I would do if I knew that I hurt someone, right? To just take accountability for it.
This heartwarming moment is interesting because they're both acting like Oprah's asking a spontaneous, tough question. Meghan pauses and sighs, indicating that she doesn't want to answer, for Catherine's sake. But the only reason why Oprah even brings this up is because they've aligned their intentions beforehand. Meghan's wanted to address this because she can use it to sound like a victim and come across as someone who's the bigger person. However, she can't make it look like this is her intention, so she has to stall a bit, and Oprah supports the acting.
I protected that from ever being out in the world.
So when you say the reverse happened, explain to us what you mean by that.
It sounds a lot like Oprah knew what the answer was going to be. I just can't put my finger on it. Could it be because she's so quick to believe Meghan's claim and says, "Explain to us"? I'm not sure. It's so puzzling. Next, Oprah hammers Meghan's point.
This was a really big story at the time that you made Kate cry. Now you're saying you didn't make Kate cry, Kate made you cry.
Yeah, I think everyone gets Meghan's claim. It's not exactly rocket science, Oprah.
So we all want to know what would make you cry. What were you going through? You were going through all of the anxiety that brides go through putting their wedding together, and going through all of the issues with your father. Was he coming? Was he not coming? And there was a confrontation over the dresses.
For extra sympathy, in theory that is, Oprah mentions Meghan's issues with her family in the preface to what is an encouragement for Meghan to continue her claims. Actual questions are replaced with encouragements, another result of the aligned intentions.
So all the time the story's out there, you had made Kate cry. You knew all along, and people around you knew that that wasn't true.
Everyone in the institution knew it wasn't true.
So why didn't somebody just say that?
It's a good question.
Yes, what a good and surprising question. The point about Oprah simply regurgitating her interviewees' statements and platitudes is made painfully obvious when we look at what she had to say about her interview with Adele. First of all, she repeats what appears to be her slogan.
When you met her for the first time, it was hard to believe that you hadn't met her before. What was your impression? What did you think? She seems very friendly.
When I'm going to do an interview of significance, I always like to meet with the person before and ask them, what did they really want? What is their intention? What do you want? Because I don't want to end the interview and you say, oh, you should have asked me, or I thought you were going to ask me. So I came here where she was, getting done with her makeup team to this house.
Firstly, it's interesting to note that she initiates her delayed answer with the discourse marker "well," which foreshadows slight modification or disagreement, precisely because she had met Adele beforehand.
She seems very friendly.
Thus, her claim that she doesn't want anyone to say,
oh, you should have asked me, or I thought you were going to ask me. So
end up sounding like an excuse, because keeping the Meghan and Harry interview and her rather extreme interpretation of aligning intentions in mind, she's more than implying that she wants the interview process to be highly controlled. This corresponds to the existing impression we have that Oprah simply holds the microphone and lets celebrities make their easy conclusions and say their catchphrases and buzzwords. Her deliberately exaggerated praise of every celebrity she interviews underlines this.
But it's so beautifully shot.
But can I say
about
this?
that for a second? Yes.
Well, I want to say that the clip that you all just showed, the Hold On clip, I think that song on the new album is going to be the national anthem throughout the world for anybody struggling with anything. That song is so poignant and beautiful. I think it becomes an anthem for people.
The interview with Adele obviously has a much different context than the interview with Meghan and Harry. However, the relevant thing is that Oprah is guiding the audience what to think about the given celebrity. She advertises for them. Thus, it's no wonder that Oprah seems a lot more preoccupied with style than content.
Yes, I wanted to do it in the Rose Garden. I had the Sally LaPointe team. They make beautiful suits. I had them make me a suit that was the color of my favorite rose. And then I realized she was going to be wearing neutral. I fretted over wearing rose-colored something when she was wearing neutral. I called Gail. I said, I think I'm going to look like a peacock. Gail, you said,
Gail said,
love
I
peacock.
like peacocks. Yes. But
I
the setting,
like a peacock.
Because these are the things you should spend time discussing. What an interview it must have been. Oprah reveals how she amazes people with luxurious settings and fancy clothes. Safest way to make people overlook and forget the lack of content in the actual interviews. Oprah has more to say about her methods.
And met her before and had a little private conversation about what do you want? And she said, I just want to be able to share my truth and talk about what I've been through and, express that in the most natural way. So that's exactly what happened during this interview.
Yeah.
What do you want? There we have Oprah's philosophy in a nutshell. She's not acting as an advocate for the viewer, which is what interviewers are supposed to be, but as an advocate and advertiser for the celebrity. Therefore, there's a hint of irony when she shakes her head no while saying that the interview went down in the most natural way. It sure doesn't sound like there was much or anything natural about this controlled conversation. And the great thing is that there's no end to Oprah's advertising. Deeply exaggerated advertising.
She's talked about her divorce, also being a single mom. What else did she tell you about her approach when creating this album?
Well, I think what she expressed, is going to save and you're so right about that, Nate. What you go through helps you get through. I think she's going to really liberate a lot of people, male, female, in marriages that no longer work.
We notice the same pattern time and time again. She's immediately siding with the interviewee and repeats their points. Liberate is one of the hyperbolic buzzwords she uses, as if an Oprah interview is that important. But Oprah has no problem making this generalization in guiding her audience.
Because one of the things she shared is that she wasn't miserable. She had an idea of what her whole life of what marriage and family was going to look like. And then when she, the reality of that was not really making her happy. And so she's freed herself from the marriage, but they obviously still have a great relationship because they're raising their son together.
The marriage wasn't making her happy. Yeah, that totally makes it all right to free oneself from a marriage, which is the euphemism Oprah uses in this freedom discourse she keeps trying to convince people of. Also, is this the great message that Oprah says will help people liberate themselves from marriages? That they're not happy? How does she even define and measure happiness? Could it be her definition of happiness? Or maybe insatiable demands that's the real problem? Who knows?
But she said she wanted to present a happy person to her son, which I think is so liberating because so many people stay for the children, making themselves miserable. Then the children grow up with a miserable mother. So I think that's going to help a lot of people.
Oprah's rhetorical tactic is to repeat the freedom discourse in form of the buzzword liberated until it's imprinted in people's minds so that they start associating Adele's actions with the euphemism liberation. It's actually a divorce, but let's not think about it. Oprah's word choice is unreliable at best and deceptive at worst. Also, what Adele says sounds like an excuse, using the miserable mother statement as a self-serving, convenient excuse so as to not come across as selfish. It would have been very interesting to hear Oprah reflect on that, as the completely unbiased interviewer she is. And the CBS journalists are very good too.
I think that's true, Oprah. You got to make yourself happy, and then happy parents, happy kids is a good policy. But
Actually, these same journalists have a history of not asking tough questions, even when the CEO of Bud Light was in the studio. Let's digress for a moment.
So how much is this marketing boo-boo, whatever you want to call it, costing Bud Light? Tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars?
We're focusing on investing behind the brand right now. So we're actually increasing the investment on Bud Light 3 times this year as we move forward.
I know you say you're moving forward, and I think that's the right attitude.
For once, the CEO was asked a specific question, how much the disastrous campaign has cost the company. However, he gets away with changing the negative verb costing to the positive investing. He effectively reframes the question and thus answers a much different question. It's worth noting that the journalist lets him get away with it, and it all ends in advertising.
People still like beer. They like it a lot.
Yeah, people love beer, and I think we're on the doorstep.
So people love Bud Light.
If this is how they act in a tough interview, it's no wonder they let Oprah get away with her statements in a soft interview. But what happens when Oprah's advertising fails? When she doesn't get away with oversimplifications and emotional appeals? 2 of her most prominent tactics. In the first seconds of the plea we're about to see, she's doing everything she can to associate with other celebrities. Dwayne and Dolly Parton. Ideally, this conveys unity to the audience, a collective identity that they had the chance to be part of by donating money. That's also why she uses the plural pronoun we in the process.
We were so concerned about what was happening in Maui that we were texting back and forth. And I read this article that Dolly Parton had given money in her community. And I said, I think this is the answer. You said, I think that's the answer.
I said, I love it.
And so we have created the People's Fund of Maui that will put money directly in the hands of the people who need it right now.
Now that Oprah's rhetorically constituted a community for the viewers to join, she can say what this is really about, getting money from people. But the pleas of celebrities and politicians always start out this way, with references to supporters of the idea, smiling and a touch of humor. In rhetoric, it's understood that this behavior clears the way for the more direct ask for people's money that we see next.
So if you send a donation, just click where you see below and send a donation. That money is going to go to one of many residents who have been displaced in Maui. We guarantee.
Next, Dwayne does what he's there to do, addressing people's skepticism. Here he can use his image as tough on the outside, soft on the inside cliché, which unfortunately still works.
That's right. And I know a lot of people out there, as Oprah and I have been finding, are just having a hard time trusting where the money goes. What organizations should I send money to? How can I help? In this case, the fund that we created with a lot of hard work from a lot of hardworking people who all care about these people of Maui. As Oprah was saying, it is a clean, direct from you directly to their hands and right away with some real immediacy.
According to the argument model, what Dwayne's doing here is called a rebuttal, which is an acknowledgement of another view of the situation. The overall claim in this plea is that people should donate to the fund. The grounds are these donations will help. The job of the rebuttal is to temporarily cast doubt on the claim, but essentially refute it. We also notice pathos, appeal to pity, as part of their persuasion tactics.
The fund that we created with a lot of hard work from a lot of hardworking people.
And the self-branding aspect.
Who all care about these people of Maui.
As if there are people who don't care. Stating the obvious is a way for celebrities to brand themselves as extra caring, presumably. After this, it's the speaker's hope that they've appealed to people's emotion and pity to such a degree that they can repeat what this is really about. People's money. Actually, they can't stop saying the word money.
Because as we're finding, as you guys around the world know, with disasters like this, the number one need is money.
Is money. Is money.
In hand.
Judging by people's reaction to this, there was a discrepancy between brand identity, how they had wished to be perceived, and brand image, how people actually perceive them. Hollywood miscalculates people's feelings and opinions on a regular basis. Thus, much of their marketing fails time and time again. They're out of touch with the people they want to be in touch with for money. That's also why Dwayne and Oprah are able to make a condescending plea like this. Condescending because they treat people as ignorant and not as equals. In the final seconds, Oprah again appeals to the community she's tried to constitute, to get the audience to think that they aren't the only ones donating, that there's an entire community behind them.
All the people who were calling me and texting me and messaging me and saying, what do I do? What do I do? This is what you do.
You know.
The People's Fund of Maui.
As this video has shown, the criticism Oprah's facing has been a long time coming. The way she unreliably advertises for celebrities and their questionable ideas, her emotional appeals and oversimplified conclusions are far from the image she wants to have as genuine and real. What do you think about the clips we've seen? Let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe for more videos.